Mr. Joey.
Mr. Mark.
Is our glass half empty or half full?
It is, well, currently I like that.
Well, we've got
Mr. Topher Mulder. No, Mr. Christopher Daniel Mulder.
No. Christopher deserves a proper intro. We've got the YouTube recording, dog walking, mortgage explaining, hair flowing, Christopher Daniel Mulder on episode 79 of the Toronto Livings podcast. You, sir, are going to break down some of these complex changes that happened last year. You're going to provide a lot of positivity to us this week.
That's what I do. I bring the positivity.
And you're going to educate us in a way that we needed to hear.
Yeah.
It's been a fun conversation, guys, and I hope everybody enjoys and gets some good tidbits out of it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Screw the tariffs.
Screw the tariffs. Cheers to that.
Cheers. Salute.
Welcome to the Toronto Livings Podcast, a conversation about all things Toronto with a focus on real estate, the culture, and of course, the food.
I'm Mark Savel.
And I'm Joey Virgilio.
And we're realtors with Sage Real Estate, working together as a Toronto Livings team with a focus on helping you buy better, sell higher, and of course, having a little bit of fun along the way.
All right, episode 79.
Episode 79 is here.
The return of the Mulder.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not watching on YouTube or Spotify, we are here with Christopher Daniel Mulder.
That's right.
Wonderful to be back, guys. It's almost exactly a year, isn't it?
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close. I can hear my box walking away below the table.
So we actually have a fourth guest.
We do.
Chris brought the dog, Mr. Moscow.
Dog. This is Mr. Moscow here. He's gonna give us some company. Yeah, that's a little Moscow. Do you guys have a dog? Like, no.
I got a cat.
Yeah,
You know what?
he's got a
Life
cat.
is better with a dog.
I believe
will
that.
tell you that much.
I believe
it
that.
is an absolute pleasure. Yeah, it's Moscow's world, and we're just living in it.
That makes sense.
But yeah, he gets to come wherever Daddy goes.
What type of breed is he?
He's a miniature poodle.
Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah, he's like a little teddy bear. And yeah, so he was a surprise dog. You know, I was one of those guys that never actually, imagined myself with a dog. I'm like, no, that's going to be too much work. Who's going to take it out? No, it's about when we travel. And now, of course, look at me. Here we are. And I'm babysitting the dog, basically.
Chris came prepared.
Yeah.
Shout out Kat, your partner, because she helped you get prepared.
Oh, serious. Yeah, serious.
Yeah, that's not me.
Like, we've gone away for weekends and not this prepared. Like, this dog's got a bed, a change of clothes. I love it.
Yeah, all of it. Full wardrobe change as well.
I love it, man.
Yeah, so that's Moscow. Yeah. We got 4 of us here.
We're glad that both of you are here. We want to have you on to kind of talk about some of the changes.
Yeah, lots of mortgage stuff happening in the last little bit. And it was like a prompt to be like, we should get Chris. First off, it's been a year.
It's been a year. Yes.
Second off, we should get Chris on because he can talk in depth about this stuff.
Glad to. And there's so much to talk about. So much has changed. I don't think any of us had all the changes and all the ups and downs of interest rates in the cards when we were here 12 months ago.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
No. Big and like gigantic changes too, not even minor stuff.
Yeah. So lots to talk about. But before we get into it,
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
He's
reversing
flipping
the
the role.
before we get into it, guys, I'm going to put you on the spot. No,
Jesus. Who invited this guy?
no, but I want to congratulate you guys on getting to episode number 79.
Thank you.
That is quite the feat. It's not easy to come every week and put in the work that you guys do and give all of us great content. I enjoy it so much, and I know lots of other people do as well. And last time I was here, you asked me,
How was your week? Where did you eat?
That's right. How was your week? Where did you eat? And I said, at Le Beau.
And we said,
He's
you should go.
Le Beau. Well, this time Le Beau came to you. And I just wanted
this guy.
to open up the episode with a little gift from Le Beau.
That's amazing.
Some croissants. These are not just Toronto's best. I think these are world class.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you haven't seen this.
Do a yeah.
You got to check this out. Like, these things are mini bocce balls. Look at these incredible things. These look way too good to eat on air, so we're going to save them for after.
Yeah.
But Le Beau?
LeBeau.
We should go. Yeah. Yeah. We'll
Enjoy,
do a.
guys.
Did you do a spin to the camera? I guess you did, right?
I did as best as I could.
Okay, that's good enough.
Moscow, don't eat them.
Maybe our screenshot will be holding LeBeau
Yeah, there we go.
songs.
Yeah,
Because we should go. Well, you just secured yourself a third visit back next year. So congratulations on
You
that.
gotta buy your way in.
You're also our first guest to come back for a second time.
Yes.
So
Well, I am honored.
You should
I'm
be,
honored.
'cause-
Thank you so much.
we've only had 5 guests and you're twice.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back. I'm looking forward to the chat, guys.
Yeah, no, we love having you on. You brought really good insight last time, and we're excited to get into it with some of the changes this week. But let's maybe start with how was our week and where did we eat?
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sorry to steal this thunder.
Can
No,
I just,
you brought
no,
the
you
rain.
kicked it off. Is what you did. Can I talk about Sum 41 for a second?
You can.
Because I absolutely was at that concert
That's
and
insane.
reliving my childhood all day long. My shout out is to Sum 41 and the Rogers Center.
Derek's the lead singer?
Yes. Also, may I say, first off, Chris, I don't know if you know this about me, but I grew up in Bolton, which is a very small town north of,
Yes.
it's bigger now, but he shouted out Bolton on stage.
Amazing.
When he was talking
But
about
why? But why?
So he talked about they're a Toronto band, obviously, but they used to play around, Guelph and Kitchener, all the places around. And Bolton was one of the spots that they used to play.
Amazing.
Wow.
Could not believe it. And I don't know who he might have been playing to at then. But there might have been about 4 people then. But that's, it was an awesome show. It was exactly what my little kid version of myself wanted to see. So it was, really, really.
Can you educate me on this, though? Because I saw it. They named a street Sum 41 way, and there's all this hype. But why? Why now? Just help me out.
So I know, he released an autobiography very recently, and then they put out an album recently, apparently. This is all news to me. I got invited last second to this, and I was like, okay, sure. But I think that's what's kicked off this another round of...
Resurgence of Sum 41. Because the world needs more Sum 41.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I'm going to break both of your hearts. It's actually their farewell performance.
Right, yeah, right. I was at their last show ever. I also should have mentioned that.
So unfortunately, there will not be any more Sum 41.
So don't get too excited at home.
What Joey saw was monumental, historical, and the last one ever.
Yeah. So that's what it was.
Yeah.
And so shout out Sum 41. That's my...
And Bolton.
And Bolton. Honestly, shout out Bolton.
Shout out Bolton, man. Why not? My week, how I ate, was actually a connection to Chris Mulder.
Oh, really?
MK Rose, Mary Kay Rose.
Yes.
You introduced us way back in the day, like
It's going decades.
12 to
Yeah.
15 years ago at one of those tech conferences we were attending. Like,
Oh, yeah. It
Real
was
estate and tech.
Ubertor.
not Ubertor was
it?
it was the website. No,
Yeah.
it wasn't Ubertor. They used to have these sessions at in Liberty Village where all these realtors and mortgage brokers and people in the space would get together and we learned about technology. And it was like a really good sharing, collaborative event.
Yeah.
Man, I can't remember. Rebar,
That's
Rebar.
Yeah, good.
Which
good
because
call.
it's like concrete. You have rebar.
Yeah.
But it was like real estate bar. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's where I met MK. And
Yes.
she's now at Sage Real Estate. And she took me out for lunch at Union
Oh,
on Ossington.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
was that your first time there?
second.
Second. I've heard very good things about it.
It's so worth it. It was my first time for lunch. When I went there before, I had the steak tartare, which was like lights out good.
Yeah.
The hamburger is probably a very close second.
Well, it's the same meat, right?
It is.
It's your tartare. It's just cooked.
It's cooked.
It's just cooked tartare.
Very well said. Very well said. Also, though, it had double smoked bacon.
Oh, okay.
So that's beef tartare just doesn't have that. Spicy aioli, but the pickles in this place, bread and butter pickles from Union, it's like a candy. Out of this world. So
When you say bread and butter, you mean like just straight up, or they call it bread and
they
butter?
call it bread and butter. Yeah.
I asked the same question when you brought this up to me.
Yeah. To be fair, everyone asked that question. They are pickles. They're just called bread and butter for whatever reason, and they are so good. They are like,
Okay.
We should go.
Pickles. We should go to Union.
yeah.
We'll unionize there. Okay.
We'll revisit it. But you were a big topic of conversation. We were just saying like how great you've been over the years and all this. So your praises were sung this week.
Oh, that's very kind. Shout out to MK.
Yeah. MK Rose. Shout out MK Rose. Shout out Union. Shout out Bolton. Shout out Mulder. Shout out everyone, man. just spread the love. I feel like we usually do how is news you can use.
Well, this is kind of a little bit all-encompassing, I think.
Yeah, I think Chris's whole segment is news we can use.
Yeah.
And I think the first topic, because we are recording on February 1st.
It is February 1st.
That's right.
Which is
It may be a historic day.
it very well is, because the three of us are back together. And also, We're getting tariffed? What the heck?
Apparently, we are being tariffed. Yes, it was pretty touch and go yesterday because we were, then we weren't, and then we were. It was an insane day, and I was watching it, monitoring that because that's very significant as far as interest rates are concerned and the Canadian economy. And at about 2 p.m., Reuters came out with an article saying that the tariff was going to be pushed to March 1st. And then I got a message at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Nope, surprise, we're back.
Still today.
Yeah, still today. So introduced 25% tariff on Canadian goods, Mexican goods, and 10% on Chinese goods coming into the U.S.
Unreal. So this is, we were talking a little bit before, but this is across the board, 25% tariffs on all goods, everything.
I don't think anybody really knows,
What's happening,
including the guy making the decisions. But from what I've heard is over the weekend, we're going to get more clarity on exactly which goods. Right now, it is supposedly overarching all goods, with the exception of Canadian oil. He's toying with the idea of maybe only levying a 10% tariff on Canadian oil.
Okay, so if I understand tariffs right, which I probably don't, our products going down there are being tariffed. So Americans are paying the 25% on our goods.
Correct.
Which will result in less demand, I guess.
Correct.
Because it's going to be more expensive to use our Canadian goods.
Yes.
So
that's 100% correct.
Do we know if we're consuming American goods, the Canadian government has to tariff America? Is that?
Well, this is the danger with this. There are no winners.
Right.
Essentially what happens is we then create a trade war.
Okay.
Because there has to be retaliation. You can't just have your goods tariffed and not counter tariff against U.S. goods.
Okay.
So this weekend, the Canadian government is meeting to decide what is being tariffed. At the moment, all I know is that it's orange juice from Florida and American bourbon.
Well, Christopher Daniel Mulder, I've got one of those two items with us today.
Orange juice?
Not the OJ. Mr. Joey Daniel Virgilio was kind enough to gift me Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, which is a lot.
That's like contraband. By the way, is this what this is for?
That's what this is for, yeah. I contemplated bringing you ginger shots, but there's no tariffs on the beets that I consume, so we might as well make haste while we can and enjoy some Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey.
That is like contraband.
Yeah. We're like Boardwalk Empire. I'm going to open this. Any more tariff stuff you want to educate us on as I prepare these?
Yeah, I think... by the way, for anybody at home wondering, it is 10 a.m. As we were recording this.
To point that out.
Yeah, I just want to point that out.
Eastern Standard Pacific Time. But if you have a European mindset, which we do, it's like 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So enjoy the bourbon.
Yeah, so that was a wild ride yesterday, and right away, you see a reaction. Mark, you asked a good question. What effectively happens when a tariff is introduced? So yes, the U.S. consumer will pay more, and so you get inflation. And one of the things that we noticed right away in the afternoon when it was announced, it's very late in the day. It was 2:30, I think, around then. But we saw an immediate reaction in the bond market.
Okay.
In the bond market, as a mortgage broker, I'm watching it constantly because that gives us the cues as to what is going to happen with fixed rate mortgages. And so as that was announced, we saw the US bond yield, the 10-year, increase. Why? Because interest rates go up when there's stimulus in the economy that creates inflation.
Okay.
Right? So if you have something that's inflationary, rates should go up to counter the inflation. So as it was announced in the US, we saw bond yields go up. In Canada, we had a divergence, which very rarely happens. Usually Canada and the US bond market match each other very closely.
Yeah.
Yesterday was one of the first times where we saw a definite divergence. And why did that happen? Because Canada hasn't introduced tariffs yet. We're being tariffed. And as a result of that, the output of the Canadian economy is presumed to decrease. So it'll affect employment and it'll affect GDP. So the Canadian Chamber of Commerce came up with a number this week, estimating if the U.S. follows through with this, how will it impact Canadians and the Canadian economy. Their guesstimate is that each household will end up costing roughly $1,900 more due to increased inflation on food and products that we bring in from the U.S.
A month, a year, a week?
Annually.
2,000 more a year?
2,000 more a year, yeah.
Okay, I'll figure out a way to make it. I'll bootleg $2,000.
Mayor Chow just did that in a one fell swoop with the property tax increases.
Good point.
Yeah.
So I actually got to make 4,000 more a year.
It's not just the 2,000. It's the 2,000 on top of everything else.
Understood.
But 1,900 per household, and this is the real kicker, and this is the concern: an estimated decrease of 2.6% to Canada's GDP.
Got it. So that's the heavy hitter right there.
That's the heavy hitter. Yeah. And if you saw the Bank of Canada's guesstimate this week, last week we can talk about Bank of Canada met on Wednesday. Their projection, I think, was 1.6% growth for the Canadian economy this year.
Right.
So if the estimate is that it's going to decrease by 2.6, then we're in a recession. We're negative. And recession means bad news for employment, bad news for output.
Right.
You know,
Dark times.
Yeah, job losses is the thing that I thought would be most affected in this whole thing whenever this started. There's correlation there, because obviously if we can't export to the US, that means that our jobs, the people that do sell to the US will slow.
Yeah.
But oil is a huge, I think, piece of that, right? Like
Absolutely.
oil is our big thing to the US that we can contribute. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, because a lot of this goes over, but
yeah.
That's our ammunition if we're fighting back is our oil tariffs. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the U.S. relies on it, and so there's a lot of criticism in the U.S. as well that this may backfire on Trump because the U.S. is so reliant, industry is so reliant on Canadian oil. And one thing that was explained to me, I'm not an expert in oil, but Canadian oil is the good stuff. It's a thicker, heavier oil than what they frack in the U.S. And it's important for the production of diesel. And so the U.S. oil they can't use U.S. oil to create diesel.
One thing I want to add to that, when people, me personally, when I hear oil, I think, gas for my car. No, all factories.
Right.
Yeah. It's cars are a very small exactly
airlines, air travel.
It's a small percentage. Our cars, it's the factories needed to produce goods and services are so reliant on that.
Right.
Yeah. And we have so many natural resources up here that we ship down to the U.S. to get refined and then sold back to us. That I'm sure the environmentalists are going to hate this, but there is an argument that maybe we should start refining our oil here and selling it, and not sending it down there. And so,
can I make an analogy real quick?
Yes, I love a Joey analogy.
And it is a Chris Mulder inspired analogy because it has to do with elephants. And the last time you were here, there was a great elephant analogy, but this is my analogy for what's happening right now. I've said this on the podcast before. When elephants fight, it's the trees that suffer, or the grass, or whatever it is.
No, you can say trees.
Yeah, let's stick with trees.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And so you're saying we're getting squashed. So maybe even ants suffer as well.
Yeah.
Everyone loses.
Everybody loses, but who gets affected? Is the smaller and smaller you go, who gets affected more and more.
I'll drink to that.
I'll drink to that. I think this is staring me down right now. So I think we should
gentlemen,
cheers to an unknown future.
Yes. I like that. We're so wise today.
We have to compete with last week's episode. The Wizards.
The Wizards of Wisdom? That was a good one. And also, this is a fantastic one.
Yeah, that's a great.
Very, very, very yummy. Enjoy that contraband.
Yeah.
It tastes even better now.
Yeah. It tastes 25% better than it did yesterday.
I love it, man. Well, you touched on rates because I think that's a very topical situation. And we did have a rate announcement, the first one of 2025 on Wednesday. We were kind of thinking that we would get a quarter cut. I think everyone was. It wasn't much of a surprise. And going into the year, I think in the pre-Trump era, we weren't concerned about tariffs as some of the motivating factors. But now this is playing a big part into it. And maybe talk to us a bit about what happened. Whoa. He likes this topic.
Yeah, this is going to be a spicy one.
Exciting him.
Talk to us about what happened. What do you think is going to happen for the year ahead?
What I think is going to happen.
Yeah. We're pulling that. We got the whiskey in us, the whiskey bourbon. So maybe just high level, what was your guesstimate going into the year with how aggressive cuts would be pre-Trump?
Pre-Trump. Okay, well, we got, how do I address, this is a broad conversation and there's a lot to touch on.
We're broad guys. Lay it on us.
All right. So, as far as interest rates are concerned, one thing that I like to specify or clarify is we tend to be a little bit lazy when we talk about interest rates because we talk about them broadly, especially when we're talking about mortgage interest rates. But I think it's worthwhile distinguishing between fixed rate mortgages and variable rate mortgages. I think that's a good place to
This
start.
is why you're the guy.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start because there's a laziness in the language that we tend to use, myself included, is just talking about rates in general.
Yeah.
And when you take a view from 50,000 feet, yes, fixed rates and variable rates do follow a similar trend when you look at the big trend. But sometimes they diverge, sometimes they change. And as we were heading into or ending 2024 and going into 2025, there was a diverging story when it came to fixed rates and variable rates, because the Bank of Canada, like the headline that everybody picks up on, because it happens once every 45 days, the Bank of Canada meets, and for 6 consecutive times, they've cut interest rates. So if you're picking up the soundbite on the radio or on the news, your assumption is that fixed rate, like every time the Bank of Canada meets and they cut by 0.25% or 0.5%, that all interest rates are going down. Okay, that is not true. Okay, so just to clarify, fixed rate mortgages are determined and influenced primarily by the Government of Canada 5-year bond yield. And the Bank of Canada has very little influence on the 5-year bond yield. What has influence on the 5-year bond yield is the U.S. bond yield. Okay, so factors that are impacting the U.S. economy will move and push the fixed rate mortgages around in Canada. And I think that's something that nuance isn't necessarily understood by most consumers of mortgages in Canada. Because they think, well, the Bank of Canada is cutting rates, so all rates are going down. Okay, so that's the first thing to understand.
And we should also add, when you agree to a 5-year rate, a fixed rate, whether it's 5 or 3 years, it is literally fixed.
Correct.
So for the term of your mortgage, your 5-year or 3-year term, it is not moving. Regardless of any news that happens, you are locked in effectively.
That's correct.
But all these announcements primarily, only affect the
variable rate holders.
Right.
Yeah. Variable rate, line of credit, student loans, they're all tied to variable. Okay. So when it came to going back to your original question, projecting, because what everybody wants to know is where are rates going next, right? It's very important listen, there are 1.2 million households in Canada who are about to renew their mortgages in 2025.
Yeah.
They're very concerned about where rates are going.
Because 5 years ago it was 1.5%, maybe 2%.
Yeah, people took 1.5% mortgages. It was insane.
Yeah.
Like I have to triple check when I look at old documents for clients 5 years ago.
You set me up with a 1.5.
It's like 1.5%. I'm like, is that for real?
Yeah.
Like I can't believe we were there.
Yeah.
And we were kind of, I don't know that we appreciated it as much as we should have.
In hindsight.
In hindsight, yeah. Yeah. So Trump aside, okay, the election aside, as we were heading into October, November, the expectation, the Bank of Canada had projected that they were cutting interest rates throughout 2024, which they did deliver on. And the expectation was that there was going to be approximately another 1% cut to what they call the neutral interest rate, which is the lower bound of the neutral interest rate, according to the Bank of Canada, is 2.25%. So currently it's 3%. We're talking about the overnight lending rate, the policy rate of the Bank of Canada. So they're heading in that direction. Okay, but with the threat of tariffs, that changes everything, right? Because if we have a very complicated situation that's developing here economically, because if we do enter into a trade war, then there's the potential that, as we talked about it at the beginning, right now the U.S. is paying for the 25% tariff for Canadian goods. So the U.S. consumer is going to pay for that, which is inflationary. On the flip side, once we announce tariffs on U.S. goods, then Canadians will pay tariffs as well, which creates inflation. And so you have this force of inflation. And when you have inflation, you can't have building inflation in an economy because then incomes go up and it's just this self-perpetuating issue, which we've just been through. We just went through this post-COVID and we all suffered tremendously out of it. So there's a little bit of, it's very recent history that we've gone through an inflationary bout. And here we are again, beginning 2025, at the risk of going through all of that again. And so the projection or the path that the Bank of Canada will take going forward isn't as clear, because if we do have massive inflation in Canada, then the Bank of Canada will be forced to raise interest rates. And that's counter to all expectations. Now, this week was very interesting to watch the press release that came out with the Bank of Canada's announcement. So you can go to the Bank of Canada website. On Wednesday morning, they had a press release. Tiff sits there and fields questions from reporters. And it's often quite boring. it's often, when are you going to lower the rate next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? This time, and you can see it even in the press release itself, there was a lot of uncertainty and concern around the impending trade war. And even Tiff expressed, we don't know what is going to happen next.
Right.
We don't know. This is uncharted territory. And the way he expressed it, which I think is accurate, is we have two counteracting forces, because you have the inflationary forces, which are the tariffs themselves. And then you also have the other impact, which is a weakening Canadian dollar. So a weakening Canadian dollar is inflationary because effectively we are importing inflation. Because if your dollar is weaker, it's going to cost us more to buy the same goods. So you have that inflationary pressure countered by deflationary pressure, which is weakening GDP, worsening job market, and that could counteract, because that effectively has the same effect of raising interest rates. And it could very well be that the two forces counteract each other and negate each other.
That sounded like a perfect storm.
It does sound like a perfect storm. You know, it's like, I love Simpsons analogies. You know, when Mr. Burns is the sickest man, He's
got every disease.
Every disease is trying to force its way through the door. It's kind of like that. Yeah.
And I just want to add, I like that you're kind of, the Mr. Burns reference is obviously gold, but I think this is the first refreshing analysis I've heard where it's not complete doom and gloom, where it's like there is a potential where these things, where we're all right in the end. We just kind of figure it out.
It could be. It's certainly from an interest rate point of view. I don't think we should diminish the potential impact.
Sure.
And you know, another thing that I think is interesting about this is the concern. I'm not so worried, although it's a potential concern that we have inflation and interest rates go up. I think the greater concern is that the economy is going to suffer tremendously. And and just one thing to add to it, because the government, what was the headline midweek this week? We are prepared to do pandemic-style support.
Yeah.
Are you, like, we just went through this.
Yeah.
That was crazy. We are prepared to do pandemic-style support to support Canadians who are going to potentially lose their jobs. We are here to send you checks, to send you money. Inflation.
Which got us.
We just went through it.
Yeah.
But it shows how concerned.
Yeah.
And one other thing to touch upon, which is a little, without getting too technical into it, we can get really nerdy, but the Bank of Canada ended on Wednesday their quantitative tightening cycle.
I did that with my diet.
You did that?
Yeah. I ended my quantitative tightening. So you can get nerdy.
So now we're going to start easing.
Yes.
And effectively, without getting too technical about it, when they're tightening, they're taking liquidity out of the market, which makes money more expensive. It's sucking money out of the system.
And just for practical purposes, if you're thinking of renovating your home, you're getting a line of credit, it's now more expensive to do that. So your decision is maybe I won't do that right now, which slows down the economy in a higher level.
That's in effect what the purpose of higher interest rates is. Yeah. So the Bank of Canada has two levers really that they can use. They can affect the policy rate, which is the prime rate, which is what we all talk about. Less understood is this quantitative easing and quantitative tightening. And that's where they're buying government debt, bonds, and putting it on the balance sheet and then removing it. So it's another way of affecting liquidity within financial markets.
Right.
And so if there's too much liquidity, which is what we had coming out of COVID, then it makes money cheap. And as they remove liquidity, which is what they've been trying to do since 2022, since inflation, blah, 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 then that's going to make money more expensive. So they've ended their tightening, which means that they're now prepared to go back into quantitative easing to add liquidity back to the market so that the Canadian financial system can continue to operate without ballooning interest rates.
But we have to be cautious because this trade war could bring extra inflation plus quantitative easing, which is like double inflation.
And that's why, when you watch that press conference, Tiff would not talk at all about what his expectations about what would happen next. And that's probably really wise. So that's why I'm not going to give you a prediction on what's happening with that.
We're going to get a rate out of you. We're going to get a rate out of you. I feel like this whole conversation you just had, I wish I had like two signs, be like, I'm happy, I'm scared. Because there was a constant like, okay, oh no, good God.
Yeah.
But, and I think that's the vibe we have right now of like this unpredictability is so...
It's been constant for like a few years now. We've been in this constant like, what's going to happen next?
Since 2000, it's been so uncertain and unpredictable. And I'm curious with the clients that you're working with, if you feel it, because I've noticed a little bit more caution where people are waiting to make decisions to see how the other shoe is going to fall since Trump came in, right? Because remember the Trump numbers for November, October were great. December,
but that's seasonal.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're here to tell us that.
That's seasonal. To answer your question, though, I would say people are far more educated in this climate than I've ever seen them about what's happening internationally and the potentials. I'll say some of the listings we've had in recent months were a reaction to what could be coming and people trying to get ahead of that. But, just to quickly reference the whole capital gains that was introduced last year, they quashed that as of last night. They said they're not going to implement that till 2026. So the reason why I bring that up is people planned to try to strategize around minimizing their capital gains, and that policy is completely scrapped for other reasons we won't get into now. And the same you have to be cautious about. There's a lot of talk going on, but whether or not this comes to fruition as bad or as good as people predict it to be is anyone's guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are seeing, I would say our clients are far more educated than they've ever been on what's happening. But I want to add one piece.
Sure.
When we hear that the rate has gone from 3.25 to 3%, let's be very clear. That has nothing to do with actually what you're paying. That's the Bank of Canada's overnight lending rate.
Correct.
Because I have had to correct a lot of people who thought, oh, so my rate's 3% now? It's like, no. That's what correct me if I'm wrong, the Bank of Canada is charging the banks to lend out money.
That's right.
Then the banks put their, as the streets call it, juice on top of it.
Otherwise known as the retail rate.
The retail rate,
The juiced retail rate, the sucker rate, what you and I pay,
is what the banks charge, and that's how they make their profits. So just a tidbit there, when you hear them reduce their rates, whatever happens this year, or increase it, that doesn't mean your jump is by that same marginal amount.
Well, the amount gets passed on. So if it's a 0.25% drop, it's a 0.25% drop. Doesn't have to be, but it always, the general practice is that happens. There have been some occasions historically, like 10 years ago, where that didn't happen, but that's another story.
Present day, this is where we're
so
at.
if it cut by 0.25%, it's 0.25%. But the actual rate that you pay, because we're talking about 3% overnight lending rate, which is the Bank of Canada policy rate, but the retail prime rate is 5.2% currently. It dropped from 5.45 to 5.2%.
So if you locked in without any discounts from the bank, you're down a quarter, you're about 5%.
Yeah, a good way people generally have a line of credit, a secured line of credit is at prime to prime plus a half. So you're going to be paying 5.2 to 5.7%.
Got it. See? So I bring mine.
Yeah.
So now, saying all that, or do you want us to we'll give our predictions where we think the rates are, and then you can...
Yeah, go, and I'll squash your dreams.
Okay, I like that. So last year, most of the analysts said between 0.75 and 1% was the type of drop we would be getting. In the end, we got 1.75. So all analysts were wrong.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Were you right? Were you the one that was actually?
No. I think that's accurate. Last year at this time, I think it wasn't so certain when the Bank of Canada was going to cut and by what margin.
Yeah.
So they overshot that. Yeah.
Well, they undershot. Many people predicted a 0.75 cut, and we got 1.75 cut.
Yes.
So this year, with all going on, I think we're gonna have a little bit more of a conservative year of cuts. I don't think 1.75 is in the cards. Just practically, it's not realistic. But I'm going to be pretty aggressive and say a 1% cut.
1%? Yeah.
I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, there's so much happening right now. I'm gonna stick with my even keel situation because I honestly think that it's just like I think everyone's gonna be paralyzed with decisions for a little bit unless drastic changes happen. So I'm gonna go under you, and I'm gonna say I was gonna say 0.5. I'm gonna say 0.75.
0.75.
Yeah.
So we've already had a 0.25%. So you're expecting another 0.5%. You're expecting 0.75%.
Yeah.
So the message behind it though is that your assumption is that the Canadian economy is going to suffer enough. There's going to be enough pain that it needs that kind of support from the bank.
Yeah.
That's your premise.
Yeah, but I'm also taking into account that 1.75 was applied last year.
Right.
So 2.75 over 2 years, I'm sticking with my 1%.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that would bring the prime rate down to 4.45%. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 4.45. That's right.
And 2.25 for the Bank of Canada's overnight lending rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your turn. The floor
My
is
turn.
yours.
The best case scenario was 1% for this year, according to analysts. And this is pre-tariffs as well. We have to be very clear about this. So I'm going to go right in the middle. I'm going to say 0.5%. So we've had 0.25%. There's another 0.25%. But depending on how this trade war goes, it could be much more dramatic, and you have to remember inflation is a lagging indicator. Mm-hmm. So the tariffs will take time to work themselves through inflation. And what could very well happen is that the Bank of Canada will respond very quickly. Maybe I could see them potentially doing a 0.5% cut in March.
Okay.
In light of
Everything
shit hitting the fan. Am I allowed to say shit?
You can say shit.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a very shit friendly.
Okay, shit. Shit hitting the fan. But in order to give them the ability to come back, to walk it back if they have to. Because the inflation won't appear until the second half of this year into next year.
Right.
Okay. We're locked in.
We'll see what happens.
So to recap,
Yeah, go ahead.
you come in at a 0.5%, 0.5% cut.
Yeah.
So another
Another quarter for
another
Another
quarter.
quarter. You're at 0.75,
0.75.
so 2 more potentially cuts,
Yeah.
or 1.5, and I'm 1%, so 3 more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's locked in.
We'll see you guys next year.
Yeah. Okay, we're done. Thanks for watching. No, we got a few more things to talk about, but this was really good. Chris, as always, you have a way of explaining these really difficult concepts that the news, for some reason, makes so hard to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we always send each other your clips on Instagram. It's
That's cool.
now we get it. So if you're not following Christopher Mulder, is that your Instagram name, or is it Tridac Mortgage?
If you search Chris Mulder, you'll find me.
Yeah.
But it's at Tridac Mortgage.
At Tridac Mortgages. And you follow us on Toronto Livings. We're always reposting his stuff because you do such a good job taking these complex ideas and making them very digestible.
Very kind. Thank
Also
you.
true. Also, I think you might be the first person out with a video.
Oh, yeah.
every interest rate announcement.
Yeah, let's just say, not just a newsletter regurgitating what the media has.
Yes.
A video of like, hey, you just heard what happened? This is what it means.
20 minutes. Hot off the press.
I love it, man. You're a machine. I love it. You're a beast. You had some questions for Mr. Mulder.
Yeah. So a big piece of this, we have just entered into a bunch of gigantic mortgage changes that have happened.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted just to go through kind of each one and discuss with you on a couple things of what they mean and what you think they mean, and if you think they're good or bad, all that good stuff.
Sure.
But to kind of kick things off, the very first and I think most important one, the $1 million. So previously you used to be able to put less than 20% down on anything under $1 million. Now that's the case. You can go up to 1.5 million. Can you walk us through that change and what things used to look like and kind of what you expect to?
Well, I think it's important to start with what things used to look like, because I was thinking about how to approach this. So we have a little history lesson going back. So how long have you been a realtor for?
18 years.
18 years.
Maybe 19. I don't know anymore.
Yeah, my license is 2006 vintage.
Okay.
So when we started in the business, you could buy a home with 0 down and a 40-year amortization.
What a different world we're living in right now.
Yeah. And so what that meant, that was very expansionary and very supportive of the market.
Until 2008.
Yeah, until 2008. And 2008 was when everything changed. And so I'm thinking about it going, wow, that was almost the end of a cycle, right? Because you have to understand at that time, why was the market being supported? Well, because we had very slow housing policy, or very slow housing activity throughout the 1990s. So I wasn't around in 1989, but my dad was, and my dad always, and he was my mentor. He taught me the business. Shout out to Arnie. Back in 1989 was the last time we had a housing crash. Housing prices went down 30%. We had inflation. We had high interest rates. And my dad always said that cycle lasted for 14 years. It wasn't a V recovery. It was a U recovery to get back to that level. So when we talk, going back to your original question, talking about mortgage policy and mortgage rules, when we started in the business, we still had supportive rules that were encouraging home ownership effectively, right? Making it easier, lowering the barriers, making it more affordable. Coming back to what's happened. So for the last 18 years, there have been dozens, and I mean dozens, of mortgage rule changes. Each and every one of them has been more restrictive than previously. It's all been walking back all the policy to make it harder and harder and to restrict in order to keep a cap on real estate. Real estate didn't need any help from loose policy, right? The fact that as of December 15th, new mortgage rules have been introduced that for the first time in 18 years are supportive is a message, right? And I think that's the way you really want to think about that. And so it's step one in rebuilding and encouraging more activity in the marketplace, right? And you guys as realtors, I mean, we can get into a conversation about where it is because it's kind of spotty, isn't it? There's some places in the market that definitely need support, certain markets, and we're talking about Canadian policy, right? We tend to be, well, Toronto's obviously the center of the universe. Everybody knows that, but the picture looks different when you go nationally. So these mortgage rule changes are the first time that they're being supportive. So shall we talk about, you want to get into the details of them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one is the expansion of insurable or insured mortgages going from a $1 million cap to a $1.5 million cap. So in 2012, 13 years ago now, when the policy was introduced, it was 2024, so 12 years ago. CMHC came out and said, you can buy a home up to $1 million with as little as 5% down payment. And back in 2012, like I couldn't dream of doing a $1 million mortgage. And I couldn't dream of somebody needing to buy a house worth $1 million with 5% down. Like it didn't compute because I think at that time, maybe the average house price in Toronto was $650, $750. I'm sure you could maybe pull up some number on that.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that. So it was like, 1 million seems so outlandish. It was like, we're never getting to $1 million. Like,
so you thought that policy at the time wouldn't be really impactful because house prices were so much less.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So, but of course, we all know what happened over that 12-year period. I mean, prices accelerated. And I mean, at that time, you could buy a detached home pretty much in any neighborhood in Toronto and buy with less than 10% down. What happened during the pandemic in 2018, 2019 onwards, $1 million wasn't going to get you into a single family home. It was only going to get you into a condo effectively at that point, right?
Maybe a townhouse if you're lucky.
For Toronto, again, we're talking national. We have a problem because Toronto is different than the rest of the country.
And these policies are federally mandated across.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they always kept that $1 million threshold, but there was a lot of criticism of it because it didn't, in Toronto, it didn't really allow you to get up into a single family home. So this rule change that got introduced December 15th now allows homeowners to buy with as little as, I'm going to say 5% loosely. There's some nuance to it because there's a sliding scale, but with as little as 5% down up to 1.5 million. So that means that for a lot of homeowners that would like to buy a family home, not a condo, because a condo isn't going to cut it for a family of 3 or 4, then it opened up that possibility because it's been up until December 15th. If you wanted to buy a home at $1 million or more, you had to have 20% down.
It's interesting. Actually, really good that you that high level thinking of what that means, because this is the first time it's been a progressive change in that sense. But have you seen it was active as of December, right? Mid-December when it officially took place.
Yeah.
Have you started to get phone calls about that? Is that something that's been like hitting your plate at all?
Not for the 1.5 million, not yet. More for the second change, which we can talk about next when you're ready.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we can flip to the next one.
Yeah.
Which is the 30-year amortization.
Yes.
A little more. I don't know. I guess people would take more advantage of this as it comes in. But yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. So up until December 15th, if you were a first-time home buyer and had less than 20% down payment, you had to amortize the mortgage over 25 years. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Right.
Now, if you had, and this is a point of confusion, the mortgage rules, keeping it straight. If you had 20% down, regardless of who you were, you could have 30-year amortization. So that was a point. People were like, oh, couldn't you always have 30-year? But you could. So if you had 20% down, no insurance, 30-year amortization for everyone.
Right.
Okay. But if you had less than 20% down payment and it was an insured mortgage, the longest amortization was 25 years. What the government has done is to make it more affordable. They're saying if you're a first-time home buyer, and we'll talk about the definition of a first-time home buyer, you can now amortize this mortgage over 30 years. And with 30 years, that all of a sudden means that the mortgage payments get a little bit more affordable because you're stretching it over a longer time period. And also, it allows you to qualify for a little more as well. It lowers the bar for qualification by, I can't remember the percentage. It's something like 7-8%, increase to what you can actually qualify for. So there's a lot of, there's some skeptics and cynics who are critical of both of these policies, right?
Yeah.
They're saying it's reckless and, we shouldn't be allowing it. And, and I would say just look back historically, like back in 2012, when the cap was set at $1 million, that was reckless. Nobody's looking back at that and saying, wow, that was a real mistake that I bought, 900,000 with 5% down.
Detached house in Toronto.
I really lost.
It's doubled in that 10 years. Twitter is a lot of that, a lot of negative feedback on the changes, but it's like, I think Joey said in one episode, it's time to adjust. Like it's time to catch up to where prices are today. So there is like a series of adjustments from where the market was in 2010, 2012 to where we are today. Prices have gone up so much. The policy needs to reflect that change.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So you're seeing a lot of
so the first-time homebuyers are definitely taking advantage of that because that just allows for a lot more. Hey, go get them. Sorry, technical difficulties.
Moscow approves.
Moscow approves. But yeah, first time Moscow. Sorry, technical.
It's
Yeah.
It's all part of the flow.
I
got Kentucky bourbon in me, bro.
Let me sit back then. But the first-time home buyers definitely are taking advantage because when you're buying first time with less than 20% down payment, that ability to stretch the amortization, it's not a great long-term policy,
right?
But it is allowing you to reduce your monthly payments.
Yeah.
Okay. And that matters.
Which is crazy also to hear from 0%. When you were telling me about 0% and 40-year amortizations, and then hearing this, like, we're going to push only 5 years up to 30. And it's like, I mean, obviously house prices are very different than they are today, but like hearing that contrast is like, it's pretty nuts.
And just to loop that together, in the US in that era of 2006 to 2008, you can get 0% down, 40% amortization and money back to furnish your place.
So you could effectively finance like 100. You could get the closing costs. So you could get 101, 102% of the purchase price.
And then they wonder why.
The Big Short is a great movie that explains the problem with that whole setup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big Short's a great movie.
It is. I'd like to rewatch it now that in the context of everything that's happening now. Yeah.
I think I've watched it about 3 or 4 times.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I gotta watch it again.
I also, for the Margot Robbie explanations of I'm like, Margot Robbie, where'd you come from? And she explains
in that movie.
Yeah, she explains some of the complex.
When they dumb down the complex ideas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then I definitely have to rewatch it.
Yeah.
She's like drinking wine in a bathtub.
In a bathtub. She's like, this means that.
Okay. I gotta rewatch it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great movie. And then there's a third change where they said one of the big problems we had in the market was if I'm renewing my mortgage, I would really only go back to the bank that initiated that mortgage.
Yeah.
But something there changed.
Yes. So there was a stress test that was introduced a number of years ago, which is the greater of the Bank of Canada's determines the stress test. So it's 5.25%, or your interest rate plus 2%. So if interest rates, which are currently, I don't know, somebody's going to say, no, it's not the right rate. I got better. Let's just call it 4.5%.
We fight the trolls.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Okay.
Yeah.
Fight this one.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say 4.5% generally right now.
Yep.
So 4.5% plus 2 is 6.5%. 6.5% is not everyone, unfortunately, can qualify at 6.5% for the mortgage that they got 5 years ago. And so the thinking was, well, why penalize those borrowers? You know, they've been paying their mortgage for 5 years. They've been stress tested. Allow them to qualify at the contract rate. So if somebody wants to switch from, I don't know, TD Bank to Scotiabank, and Scotiabank is off, I shouldn't be using bank names, but and Scotiabank's offering a lower rate, then the mortgage is going to qualify at that rate. Yeah.
Right.
Which is, it's good for consumers. It's pro-consumer.
This makes so much sense. I don't know why this was a thing in the past that they held to. Because, I mean, it just creates competition in the marketplace, which I think is like necessary to keep prices down.
Do you think we should just get rid of the stress test completely, or do you find that's something that's worthwhile keeping?
You know what? It saved our ass.
Did it?
Yeah, it saved our ass.
Okay.
Like if you think, I was very critical, like all of us. It was like every time it got harder and harder, it's like, here we go again. The government's interfering, this and that. Without the stress test, with the froth and the bubbly market that we had, the pandemonium that we had in 2021, it would have been much worse than what we had. It would have been way worse if people were qualifying for their mortgages at 1.5%.
Right.
It would have just gone completely out of hand.
When
it
you
would
put-
have been amplified.
When you say it that way, I can see the value of having it there, because it was kind of like a last stop rail before you fall off the bed type thing. But I do think that amount should be revisited every couple of years, the intensity of the stress test.
Yes.
To get a sense of where the market's at, and maybe we fluctuate that.
Yeah, and I think to put a little nuance to it, the stress test was really important when rates were sub, X percent, 2%, or 3%, whatever you want it to be. Was it effective when rates were 7% last year? Because it was like there were banks at the time, well, they were offering 6%, 6.5%. It was pretty bad for a couple of months. So 6.5% plus 2%, 8.5% to 9%. Maybe that was a little bit on the.
You're almost better off going to my cousin Vinny to getting a mortgage in the dark alley. Right?
Yeah, it was that expensive. Yeah, crazy. That didn't last long, but there were borrowers that were having to take rates at 6%, 7%. Yeah, really, really tough. Yeah.
And then, just lastly, there's some changes happening to multifamily homes.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So this is something I'm excited about, because I kind of like, in my day-to-day work, I enjoy construction financing, which is a real specific niche in the mortgage world. For anybody that doesn't know, not only am I a mortgage broker, but I also operate a private mortgage fund. And so with that private mortgage fund, very often we're funding renovations, bridging gaps to finish projects. So it's something that I'm quite passionate about. I also live in the east end of the city, lots of laneway suites that are being created, which are, being an urbanist, I think it's kind of cool, just to see what laneways can do to transform this. Yeah.
I just saw an application last night. I don't know where it's at, but Twitter was a buzz over this. 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom laneway house. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think we might need to kind of pull back the reins on what they're allowing in laneways.
Yeah, for sure. That would be pushing it.
That would be pushing it.
That would be pushing it. That just flipped the whole neighborhood up, backwards.
Yeah. So anyhow, as you were, I just sparked the memory.
Yeah. And so, again, talking about supportive policies, the federal government in their budget in November, Chrystia Freeland, now ex-deputy minister, they came out with a plan. This was part of a whole laundry list of supportive policy from the government, federal government, to support housing intensification. How to address this gap. I think we talked about this last year. The gap, we were all population's growing and the housing gap is 3 million in Ontario. So
Yeah.
how to address it, right? That's government has to do something. It's a political issue. So one of the things that they introduced was there are two things. Number one is a loan program supported by the government, whereby if you create a second unit to help with the housing crisis,
So we're talking garden suite, laneway.
garden suite, laneway, or even basement.
Basement suite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Legal. Has to be legal.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some terms to it. The government will give you a low-cost loan of 2% amortized over of $80,000 at 2% amortized over 15 years.
Okay.
So, 2% is less than the rate of inflation. Well, basically inflation. So in real, it's a very affordable rate, especially when bank rate is 4.5. So that was one loan program that was introduced.
And that's probably most effective in a basement apartment. If you're talking an $80,000 loan.
Yeah. It's a subsidy to help.
Yeah, it'd either tax on for a
that's
laneway.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to, we can get somebody in. Lorena was in here. She could talk about it for sure. What it costs just to get the permits.
Yeah.
And the drawings. It's probably about
50 to 80.
50
Yeah,
to 80.
you're right there.
So it's just getting the plan set up. It's not going to do much for the construction, but for plans. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people have been very excited by the fact of laneway suites and garden suites and all that stuff. But like realistically, the basement apartment is the first step you should be doing before you take on those bigger projects, because you already have the land there. It's already built. It's below you. And getting that's to me is just like the way to go.
Yeah.
Get your low interest rate loan,
Yep.
build your basement apartment out, get that set up for a year, and then
80,000 would be perfect for that because it doesn't need the permits.
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
drawings.
all day.
Yeah.
You're good to go. Sorry. So
Yeah, and then the second one is came into effect on January 15th, and what it is the federal government again saying through CMHC, which is a crown corporation that insures mortgages, we will allow borrowers to borrow up to 90% of the as complete value of your project to finance up to 4 suites, including a garden suite. So garden suite and 3 units or a 4-plex. And that's a real, I think that's significant. Some people have been critical of it, saying, why would anybody take it? Because you pay the insurance, this and that. So for example, like let's go through an example what that means. Okay, so let's say you bought a house for $1 million and you put 20% down. So you have an $800,000 mortgage on it, okay? And you want to build a laneway suite, which is going to cost $750,000, okay? As it stands now, the only way to get that $750,000, it'd be quite challenging. Usually, you would probably do it through a private mortgage, construction mortgage, and then when the project's done, you have to consolidate it. It's expensive, it's cumbersome. So through this program, what effectively will be possible is that you present your drawings to the lender. The lender will go and do an appraisal and say, yeah, with the laneway suite, your house will go from $1 million to $2 million. And we're going to give you 90% of $2 million, which is $1.8 million. So you have an existing mortgage of $800,000. You're getting $1.8 million. So you've effectively, the delta between those two numbers is $1 million. So now you have a $1 million budget to build out your laneway suite, to add a basement apartment, to do whatever needs to be done. And this is a CMHC insured mortgage. So insured mortgage rates are the lowest rates in the market because they're insured by CMHC, so the risk is lower. It's a specific pool of money. Right now, an insured mortgage, probably after what's happened with Trump and the tariffs, probably around 3.99%, getting into the 3s. So really, really effective way of doing this. Yeah.
So good. We're happy face.
This is a happy face.
a happy
Yeah,
face.
but both of them are happy face. And and I think I live in Leslieville, and you see a lot of that densification, and lots of laneways, underused spaces, and you probably saw. I think that's the reason you brought it up. You saw I did a piece. I walked around the neighborhood with Moscow, and said, this is a laneway.
Yeah,
This is a laneway.
It was Adriana S, my wife. Yeah. You might remember her, right?
I remember her.
You were at the wedding.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Definitely vaguely about the wedding. Yeah. I remember robots.
There was robots at the wedding. Yes,
Shooting lasers.
They were shooting lasers. I wanted to shoot confetti, but the cleanup costs of that were just egregious. That's a true story. I also wanted indoor fireworks, and they declined.
They poo-pooed that one.
Yeah, so we did them outdoor. But anyhow, I digress. Well, I feel so much smarter.
Yeah.
It could be the whiskey.
I feel very confident about it all.
Yeah. No,
To be clear, that's bourbon.
no, I think it's both.
Is bourbon
Yeah.
whiskey.
Bourbon whiskey.
Bourbon
Listen,
whiskey,
Joey's a man of efficiency.
Okay.
He's gonna. If he's gonna,
There's somebody out there right now who knows a lot about bourbon and whiskey who's going to see this and go, they're the same.
we fight the trolls,
Yeah, we fight-
whether we're right or
Somebody
wrong.
correct us. Somebody leave a snooty remark, you idiots. Bourbon is whiskey made with corn.
It's produced. It doesn't give me any details with what we're consuming, but it's really good. It's really good. All right, I think maybe to wrap up, we did this last year, and do you know the results of our guesstimates of average prices in the city? Did we share that with
You
you?
only projected it for the entire world to show what idiots we are. Yeah.
So yes. Well, I don't think we're idiots. I think everyone was wrong last year with the interest rates.
Yeah.
And I think that's we live in a realm of illusion where we think we could predict the future, and that what past experiences are going to predict what's going to come.
Yes.
And in the last 5 years, I really hope have showed us we know jack shit. Black
isn't that
swans
true?
are everywhere.
Isn't that true?
Right? These events
Isn't that
happen,
true?
so just go with the flow.
Are you throwing shade on Joey, the swan?
No, Joey the Swan never gets.
Is he a white swan or a black swan? You know?
He's all swans. He's like my Kentucky whiskey bourbon. He's all swans in one.
swans, all right.
Joey sees no color. Okay, he takes no form. He's like wata. But yeah, no, we had our guesstimates, and Joey won that. He was the most correct in that sense.
I.e. most conservative.
He was most conservative. Yeah, I was the most reckless, and you came in the middle. So I'm curious to see if
Party time.
I'm curious to see if our rate predictions fall under a similar trajectory.
Okay.
So I guess to end it, what would be your guess for average price in the GTA for 2025 with all that knowledge we just shared and instilled?
We're talking general number,
GTA.
condos included,
Yep,
like
semis,
everything.
detached. Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm gonna go. So
Do you wanna
for
recap?
context, what is it now?
yeah, it's 1-1.
1-1.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna say modest growth, maybe 75,000 higher, 50 to 75,000 higher. So I'm gonna say flat, like zero. What is that? Like 0 point.
You want a range? You could do 0 to 1, a million to 1-1.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 1-1, 1-1 to 1-5, 1-1 to 1-1-5.
Okay.
There you go.
1-1 to 1-1-5. I was so confident moving into this before the tariffs conversation started coming into play.
I loved January 1st. Every real estate prediction, like wasn't it? Every real estate prediction was like 5%, 7%. Every one of them before tariffs. But
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah,
Sorry to cut you
this
off.
threw me for a loop. I'm gonna stay. I'm also gonna stay on the more conservative side. I will do a little bit more than Chris. So
Okay.
I'm gonna say. You said, what did you say?
1,150,000.
1.115. Okay. I'm gonna push to the 1-2. I'm gonna push to the 1-2.
Let's go.
I feel I feel gambling. I don't know if
Let's
it's
go.
I don't know if it's the bourbon, but
Everybody's
it's
getting
getting
both.
pretty good right now.
Sharks and
You'll,
swans,
you'll
baby.
notice I've been sipping mine way slower than these guys. So
I think 2 million. This market's going to the moon. You're
Well, look out.
idiots if you don't buy my meme coin. It's called Shark Coin. Do you guys know about Haktua coin?
Yes. Yep.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
I heard
went
about
down
it.
that
I heard
rabbit
that
hole.
it didn't go well.
It-
She disappeared.
She did.
She disappeared.
She did. I good hopes for her. I hope she comes back and like clears the air. And I can't wait for the Netflix documentary on that one. 'Cause that's gonna be so convoluted. Jake Paul's involved in it.
You know what though? But now's your chance to get her on your podcast. So
This is a good point.
she may want to clear the air
Yes,
on
the Toronto
on
Living-
the Toronto Living's
real estate podcast show.
There's a chance for you
Yeah,
guys.
we're top 50 in Toronto. So Haktua girl, if you're watching.
I think that's your 2026 goal.
All right, so we got Joey at 1.2 million.
Yep.
By design, I have to smash that. I just can't accept 1.2. I'm gonna go 1.235.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
35. Okay.
1,235. I think I'm gonna lose. I think somewhere between Chris and Joey is realistically where we're gonna
So
go.
flat. So flat. I mean,
Well, we're at 1-1, so it's not flat.
well, relative. I mean, it's very modest, isn't it? And the reason I have that number
Yeah.
is because I'm worried about the condo market.
Okay. So interesting because I want to do a follow-up guesstimate
Yeah.
of which segment's gonna do the best.
Yeah, because the problem here is that, like, I have no doubt that Toronto semi-detached, are going to do gangbusters.
Okay.
And we know that.
Okay.
But I think it's being dragged down. And the way I think about the Toronto market is it's a pyramid, right? And you've got the base of that pyramid are condos. And the condo buyers and sellers, end users, are the feeders into the rest of the market. If nobody's buying and you guys can correct me, please. I really want you to make me feel happy about this. But if nobody is there buying condos from people that want to upsize, let's say you just got married and you want to have a baby, then you're going to look for more space. But who are you going to sell to? There's nobody to sell to.
Okay.
And that's my concern.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's fair. What's your take on it?
I think condos are going to take off. I think the exact opposite. I think this is going to be the year of the condo. The lunar year, New Year is the year of the snake. The Savel New Year is the year of the condo.
I hope you're right.
I think
hope you're right.
condos are going to surprise us all. I think the affordability of them is going to be a big factor that's going to draw a lot of people in. I'm seeing it day to day. We're seeing a lot of condos moving a lot more than we
this
did.
is the anecdotal stuff. I need this.
I'm
Tell me.
I'm feeling it. I'm seeing it. I think this year is going to be the year of the condo, and next year is going to be the year of the detached or the semi.
That's funny. I have the exact opposite thought process of you.
Hey,
Do you guys work together?
which part of the elephant are we grabbing? We're all touching different parts of the elephant.
Great analogy, right?
Okay, so we're going to say biggest winner, biggest loser. I'm definitely saying condo, biggest winner.
Okay.
And biggest loser is semi.
Okay. Interesting.
I just threw that in there.
Okay.
I have no knowledge of that. You're saying biggest winner is detached?
It's the detached, semi-detached market. 416, because again, we're talking GTA.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna say I'm gonna get granular and say
Toronto.
safe bet.
Yeah.
This is a no-brainer. I'm gonna say 416, semi and detached.
Okay. Semi
Biggest winner.
detached and condo, biggest loser. Joey?
Okay. I'm going to throw a little bit of a side. So I'm going to say towns are going to be a part of this as big as gainers.
Okay.
And it's a lot to do with that mortgage rule that just got passed. I think towns are gonna like stop coasting on that 999 line.
He's identified that trend, and I think he's very right with that.
You know what? You're absolutely correct. Because a lot of first-time home buyers that I'm working with for pre-approvals is like, condo? No, we're looking for a stacked town or the townhouse.
Right.
Skipping the condo
It's
stage.
the new semi.
Yeah. Right.
And that's why I think semis are going to do bad, because it's going to take away from semis.
So I think condos. I'm gonna say condos still stay stagnant.
Okay.
I don't think they're there yet. I think the builders have stopped building and the pre-construction has gotten hit. So I think there's still breathing room before we start feeling that lack of inventory on the other end of it. But I'm gonna say biggest loser to I'll say.
This is the biggest loser, just the least
movement. Yeah. I'll say I'm gonna say detached on this one.
least movement detached.
They're volatile, and I don't know. I'm just gonna. I'm gambling right now.
Yeah,
we're all gambling.
Yeah. I like that. Okay, so we're gonna revisit this next January. We will be back for your third visit.
Oh, it's locked in.
It's locked in.
I'm honored.
Yeah, I sent you a calendar invite.
Threefer. All right.
Threefer.
All right.
Do you know what my nickname for him is? Topher. So Threefer Topher, because Chris Topher.
I'm Topher the Mofer.
Topher the Mofer.
And actually, my photo on his phone, you know, when I call him, it's actually a
Gopher.
Gopher.
Christopher Topher.
I don't know how we got there. Actually, that sounds really weird.
Because I learned that Topher was short for Christopher, and I'm like, I'm calling you Topher from now on.
Topher Mofer.
Gopher.
And then it's a Gopher.
Yeah. And so when I send his contact to people, I have to like delete.
Change.
It's a very complex process. All right, man. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I feel so much smarter.
Yeah.
I actually feel a lot more positive about things the way you described it.
Good.
Yeah, I think you shed a lot of light on the shadows that were causing fear and anxiety and like, what does all this mean? And you really distilled it down in very digestible formats.
Totally agree with that. Yeah.
And the Kentucky whiskey bourbon so helped. Any praises you want to sing for Christopher?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you again for coming on. Honestly, this is, it's always so, it's just extremely informative. And I think this is a piece of something that our audience needs in terms of like really diving into the detail stuff. Mm-hmm. We do our market reports, but like this is, these are really big changes, and like, it's really nice to hear you break them down like as simply as you do.
It's a good companion to what we talk about. I think you're the yin to our yang, where like, we could talk sales and yeah, but like the financing is such a big part that makes all of what we talk about possible, and understanding that's so important. So I'm going to say in the show notes, we're going to have all your information.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Sign up for his newsletter or your subscription list, because he gets you. No one's ever beaten you when it comes to rate. And I'm always like, come on. I'm rooting on the other horse. I'm like, come on, beat him. And it's like, Mulder update. So you're winning in that. Don't stop those reports because they're really good. And I assure you, people are watching and listening because Adriana S. always tunes in for a good recap of what's happening out there. So keep up the good work.
Thanks, guys.
Totally agree.
Wishing you tremendous success in 2025.
Yep.
We're your biggest supporters, so we'll be sending you what we can. And keep doing what you're doing, brother.
Thanks so much, guys. A real pleasure to be here. Thanks for the bourbon.
Yeah.
And shall we have a croissant?
Let's eat.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for listening to the Toronto Living's Real Estate Podcast. You could find more information on how we work over at torontolivings.com. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter to get price reports from over 150 different neighborhoods in the city each and every month.
If you got any value, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And if you made it this far, thanks for listening.